The early morning sky over the Normandy coastline was heavy and gray, the clouds thick and low, with faint streaks of pink and orange just beginning to light the horizon. A cold wind swept across the English Channel, cutting through the woolen uniforms, canvas jackets, and steel helmets worn by the soldiers packed tightly in the landing crafts. Months of relentless training had prepared them for this moment, yet nothing could simulate the roar and chaos that met them as the first waves hit the sand. Artillery shells screamed across the water and exploded with terrifying force. German defenses, meticulously prepared and fortified for years, awaited the invaders like predators lying in ambush. Steel stakes, hedgehogs, mines, entangled barbed wire littered the beach, each piece designed to tear through men and vehicles before they could advance more than a few meters. As the Higgins boats bumped against the shallow shore, soldiers clutched the metal sides, hearts hammering, muscles tense and trembling. Some whispered prayers under their breath. Others stared silently at the horizon, trying to summon courage from the depths of their fear. Then, with the lowering of the ramps, the nightmare began in full force. Men poured onto the sand, some tripping over obstacles or sliding into churned earth, only to be met immediately by a hail of bullets. Machine gun fire cut arcs of death across the beach, bullets striking sand, metal, and wood with deadly precision. The cries of the wounded and dying mingled with the screams of engines and the thunderous artillery from offshore, creating a deafening, chaotic symphony that overwhelmed the senses. Smoke and dust clung to the air, obscuring the sun and transforming the morning into a blurred, surreal scene of terror and confusion. Amid the carnage, acts of courage emerged. Soldiers formed small, impromptu squads, helping each other across the open sand and improvising tactics to survive. One group huddled behind the twisted remains of a landing craft, returning fire with rifles and Thompson submachine guns while plotting their next move across the deadly beach. Another soldier, spotting a weakness in a nearby concrete pillbox, sprinted across the exposed sand and lobbed grenades into the bunker, clearing the way for his comrades. Engineers, carrying explosives in backpacks, risked their lives to demolish obstacles blocking the infantry's advance. Each act, though fleeting, contributed to the larger effort, forming a fragile chain of survival and determination that gradually shifted the balance on the sand. The first hour tested human endurance like nothing else. Men fell with every step, yet the beach slowly began to fill with survivors. Medics, identifiable by the red cross emblazoned on their helmets and jackets, moved like shadows, darting across sand and debris to drag wounded soldiers to temporary safety behind dunes or overturned craft. Their presence offered hope, a fragile lifeline amid the chaos. Soldiers encouraged one another through shouts, gestures, and even brief jokes, small sparks of humanity in the relentless storm of violence. One private yelled across the sand to his friend, "Keep moving, we've got this." Those words, carried by adrenaline and fear, became a mantra for survival. Repeated over and over as men pushed themselves forward, step by painful step. Tanks and armored vehicles struggled across the sand, their massive treads sinking into the wet and unstable shore. German anti-tank guns waited patiently, ready to destroy anything that moved. Yet each tank that pressed forward provided cover and hope, a mobile fortress suppressing enemy positions and enabling infantry to advance. These lumbering giants roared across the beach, their engines growling over the chaos, their cannons cracking in synchronization with naval bombardment from ships offshore. Coordination between sea, land, and air, though imperfect, was vital. Every tank, every landing craft, every bullet fired contributed to the delicate, precarious dance of destruction and survival. Above the beach, Allied aircraft performed daring maneuvers, strafing enemy positions and dropping paratroopers into the countryside behind the front lines. These airborne units faced their own nightmare, scattered across unfamiliar terrain, often isolated and surrounded by enemy forces. They carried out missions to disrupt communications, destroy artillery batteries, and sow confusion, giving the beach landings a fighting chance. Many paratroopers became entangled in trees, landed in hedgerows, or stumbled upon German patrols, yet they adapted, using terrain and cover to hold positions and engage the enemy. Every small victory behind the lines eased pressure on the soldiers storming the beaches, demonstrating the vital interconnectedness of the invasion. By mid-morning, first beach exits were secured, and the tide of battle began to shift. Soldiers advanced toward the cliffs. Still facing sniper fire, machine guns, and hidden mines, yet gaining ground inch by inch. The terrain was treacherous. Sand gave way to rocky paths, and every mound or dune offered both cover and danger. Communications were sporadic. Radios frequently failed or were destroyed. Officers relied on runners and hand signals, improvising as the battle demanded. D-Day was not a linear or orderly advance. It was a chaotic, dynamic struggle where initiative, courage, and quick thinking often mattered more than orders or strategy. Acts of heroism punctuated the relentless violence. One soldier, seeing a comrade pinned behind wreckage, ran through open fire to drag him to safety. Medics stabilized the wounded, refusing to stop even when bullets tore through the air around them. Diaries and letters recovered after the war tell of moments like these. Soldiers sharing jokes to maintain morale, whispering prayers for strength, comforting the terrified and injured, or refusing to leave a friend behind. Each act strengthened morale and survival, human threads woven into the larger tapestry of battle. As the afternoon wore on, the beach became a surreal landscape. Destroyed landing craft, twisted metal, and debris littered the sand, interspersed with the bodies of the fallen. The smell of cordite, blood, and seaweed was thick and overpowering. Distant artillery continued its relentless rumble. Yet despite the horror, progress was tangible. Engineers cleared paths through obstacles, reinforcements advanced, and coordination improved. Infantry units secured dunes and small areas, creating temporary safe zones for medics and supply lines. Survival required a balance between forward momentum and careful preservation. The broader invasion strategy unfolded simultaneously. Securing the beach was only the beginning. Linking up with forces landing at Utah, Gold, Juneau, and Sword beaches was critical. Supply lines had to be maintained to prevent German regrouping. Every hour gained was a tactical victory, every casualty a sobering reminder of the stakes. Paratroopers harassed enemy positions inland, cutting off reinforcements, destroying communications, and creating confusion that allowed the beach landings to succeed. D-Day was not a single moment, it was a complex web of interconnected operations, each relying on the others. By late afternoon, objectives were beginning to materialize. The beach was no longer purely a battlefield, it had become a staging ground for inland operations. Soldiers pressed toward inland objectives, securing key positions while preparing for inevitable German counterattacks. Engineers continued clearing mines and obstacles, medics worked tirelessly, and supply chains delivered ammunition, food, and reinforcements. Casualties were immense, yet the foothold held, a testament to resilience, strategy, and courage under fire. The story of D-Day was more than strategy, it was human endurance under extreme conditions. Letters and diaries reveal the psychological as well as physical toll. Fear was constant, yet duty and comradeship drove men forward. "I felt I might die at any moment," one soldier wrote, but there was no time to think about fear, only forward, always forward. Courage, defined not as the absence of fear, but as action in spite of it. was the essence of the day. Human resilience, even amidst unrelenting horror, became the defining force on the beaches. As night approached, the soldiers had to consolidate their positions. Sandbags were hastily piled, trenches dug where possible, and wounded soldiers were tended to wherever medics could work safely. Communication with naval and air units remained intermittent, yet officers improvised, using runners, signal flares, and visual cues to maintain coordination. The scale of the operation became evident as waves of reinforcements continued to arrive, each bringing additional men, supplies, and hope for the success of the campaign. The inland push began almost immediately. Roads were mined, hedgerows fortified, and small villages held by German forces became immediate objectives. Soldiers moved cautiously, using every available cover to avoid sniper fire. Tanks provided mobile protection, but were vulnerable to hidden anti-tank guns. Engineers cleared paths and destroyed barricades, often under direct fire. Coordination between units was vital. Every delay could allow German reinforcements to regroup and counterattack. Paratroopers operating behind enemy lines disrupted communications and attacked key positions, delaying German responses and enabling the main forces to press forward. Small, personal acts of heroism continued to define the battle. A soldier carrying a wounded comrade across open terrain risked his life repeatedly, bullets striking perilously close. Another group, trapped in a destroyed building, held off an enemy advance long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Medics continued to treat the injured under the most extreme conditions, often improvising with limited supplies and courage alone. Letters and memoirs from these men reveal moments of shared laughter, whispered prayers, and quiet determination, the human spirit shining through amidst unimaginable horror. By midnight, the beachhead was fully established. Supply lines were functional, casualties were being treated, and soldiers had begun to push further inland. The cost had been staggering, yet the operation had succeeded. Courage, planning, improvisation, and sheer human will had transformed the chaos into a foothold that would enable further advances into occupied France. D-Day was not just a military operation, it was a testament to human endurance, cooperation, and courage. Ordinary men in extraordinary circumstances acted with ingenuity, determination, and selflessness. The beaches of Normandy, forever scarred by the violence of that day, now stand as a monument to those who fought and died. As the sun rose over the coastline on June 7, 1944, it illuminated a battlefield transformed by courage, marking the start of a campaign that would change the course of Europe forever.